My life as a homosexual, gosh, I never, there was never a come out or a revelation or any of the traditional things. I knew I was different when I tried to put on the airs of having a girl or a female date. It just wasn't a thing. I do know that my hillbilly cousins taught me how to have gay sex because it's something they did on the down low all the time. They, of course, went on to live heteronormative lives, but not me. I was born in Texas City, Texas, and grew up cruising the Texas City Dike in Galveston Island. There was a bar called the Kon-Tiki in Galveston, quite infamous. Galveston's notorious. It always has been. Since the 17th century. There's a drawbridge to get to the island that they could put up to keep the state troopers and revenuers from coming across to the island and bringing up all the gambling and prostitution, which seemed to be almost mandatory in the 1940s. Of course, I wasn't born until 1953. So in the 70s there was still the residual of that. The Maceo family was the gangster family that ran most of the graft in Galveston, and the residual of that remained. So it was a cruisy place. It was very underground. Still to this day, it feels like that when I go there. And I was just there last fall. And that's where I grew up in Galveston. But if you grew up in Texas City High School class of 72, we had a teacher, a drama teacher, always got hundreds in his class, and his advice was, if you don't like it in this little town, then get in your car and go up the freeway to Houston, 60 miles up the freeway, which is what we did. Well, as a teenager, I had a paper route in Texas City. One of the person who befriended me at the newspaper was a guy who owned a local plumbing shop. His name was Garland Gist, and I don't think he's around anymore. I don't know. I know he went to East Texas. But we spent a lot of torrid weekends at the Motel Leon there in downtown Texas City. And he was just an early teenage memory of the warmth of a bear-type man. A slightly older, very hairy man that was just wonderful to be with and around. And did he educate me or bring me out? Well, yes, in a carnal sense. We had a wonderful gay activist that, while I wasn't as close to as he wanted to be close to me, he's no longer with us. His name was Ray Hill. Ray Hill is the famous Houstonian gay rights activist of the 20th century that I had the pleasure of working with for many years and being around. My father, at the end of his life, when he was 90 years old, he says, I love you no matter what, but he wouldn't say what, I could only stand to be around him for a few days before I had to get back to California. I helped him get on YouTube when he tried to run for United States Senate against Rand Paul in Kentucky. And his signature thing was ultra-right-wing John Birch Society. We had meetings in our house in Texas City, which was the ultra-right-wing group in the 60s and 70s. Second Amendment rights, guns everywhere, guns mounted in the back of his old Lincoln and everything. So we didn't have a lot of commonality on those subjects. I just stood back and tried to support him. So that's what my father-son relationship was very different from my mother. My mother, Doris Jane Johnson, was a musician, very talented, and an artist. She played trumpet with a band leader from the 40s and 50s named Billy Vaughn. He had a hit record called Sail Along Silver Moon and Tryon. And he went from Glasgow, Kentucky to Nashville and recorded the hit. She did not go with the band back then. She went with Dad, and they had 3 kids, and they all went back to Kentucky, except for me, and I'm out here in California. One of those kids, my youngest sister, Elaine, had a bout with antidepressants, took one of Dad's many, many guns, because it was so easy to grab right there, and blew her head off in 2014. So I don't know. I don't keep guns around the house like my father was infamous for. He wasn't quite the Westboro Baptist Church. He wasn't that evil. Fred Phelps, in Kansas, but I could only stand so much of him. God rest his soul, and we go on from there. From the first partner I had, I certainly depended on him. Lee, the hairdresser from Valencia, and then through the 1980s when I was at KROQ, we had three of us live together. A high school principal, myself, the radio engineer, and Lee, the hairdresser. What a gay household that was in North Hollywood. And so it's people come together, and we rely on those that are close to us. I'm a long-term survivor. I was diagnosed with HIV in 1989. And in Orange County, at where I was living in Newport Beach, the doctor said, you have to get your things in order. You have about 6 months, a year to live. It's all over. In 1994, Merck came out with Crixivan, and it's like from being in a death march to getting your energy back and having your life again. And it's been that way ever since. There's been a lot of other experimental treatments. I had to do subcutaneous Fusion injections, numerous things. I am happy to be with Dr. Matthew Herman over here at AHF Beverly Hills, and had another Filipino doctor before I was in AHF when I had Blue Shield for healthcare, who is retired with his husband out in Palm Springs now. But I did spend 2 weeks in a hospital that's not there anymore, Hollywood Community Hospital, with pneumocystis carinii on intravenous pentamidine and Biaxin to recover from that. I dropped to about 160 pounds. I'm 210 right now, and was much heavier in the 80s. That was a close call in 1995. I could not make it up one flight of stairs. My energy was gone, but I managed to survive that. So that's the story for us almost 70-year-old long-term survivors. There's a scene from The Last of Us, episode 1, season 3, with Nick Offerman and with Bill and Frank, where he says, older means we're still here in the strawberry garden. And we'll put that up too. Well, this is a microcosm of the human experience as you get to be in your 70s, which I almost am. Your friends are going to fall away. And when they all fall away earlier, at an earlier age, when you're in your, late 40s, early 50s, which I was, that's concerning. And it's like an attack from another country, or something. It's just like everyone so many of them just suddenly went away, and that happened in the 1980s. When something is so tragic, you have to put it out of your mind a bit. I do, or I go nuts. I'm one of those people who tends to be optimistic and does not dwell on such negative things. Today I'm doing consulting, sort of the engineer for KWXY and their talk station KKGX 1340 and 920 AM, and their FM side 92.3 and 99.1 out in Palm Springs. And they also have a channel 8 with Newsnet on it right now that we're running. So that's what's happening today in 2023 for me. My name's Frank Martin.